What's going on, Wolfpack? Back at you again with another episode of Market Watch Mondays. I'm recording this Sunday night at 7 p.m. PST. I actually haven't even gotten a chance to watch all the games yet, so this won't be a player value. I think this will be another process episode. But before we get to anything, you know what time it is. Hit that intro.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, yeah. So I mean, the reason why I haven't watched any games this week is because I went had a great time with my girlfriend. Went on the weekend. We did this hike in South Lake Tahoe called Mount Tanic or Talic, Mount Talic. Anyways, we walked 6 miles up like 3,000 feet, and I learned on this trip that my girlfriend's way more fit than I am because my legs feel like fucking Bambi on ice. After I came down, I was jiggling, just literally struggling to stand up, still struggling to walk the second day. But we had a fun time. We spent some more time in Tahoe, which is why we didn't get back in time to actually catch all the games. But that doesn't matter because the topics I want to go through over this week is not related to what happened in the NFL games. It's another process video, and it kind of builds on what I went through last week. But it's gonna be all about rebuilds, right? And it's gonna be about how I approach a rebuild, when I approach a rebuild, and the types of pieces that I like to build around, the types of assets that I want to build around. But before I get deep into that, I just want to give another shout out to Justin Jefferson. Put up another fucking monster game as a rookie. I tweeted this out earlier today, but I think we've kind of been looking for that wide receiver class to rival the 2014 legendary class, with OBJ and Mike Evans, Brandon Cooks, and all that. And, I think we found it. We might not have an OBJ yet. Might not have an OBJ yet, although Justin Jefferson and CeeDee Lamb are certainly doing their best to try and mimic his rookie season. But we have depth out the ass on this rookie class, right? We got CeeDee Lamb at the top, along with Justin Jefferson. He's like basically right up there now. I mean, he's been super, super, super impressive. And then we got T. Higgins, who's been balling. My boy T. Higgins, who Nick and Noah disrespected all offseason. He's balling out of control. He is the clear alpha there now in the Bengals offense, along with Joe Burrow. Those two are going to grow together really well. Laviska Shenault, who I absolutely love. He didn't have a great day today. Didn't put up too many numbers because honestly, it wasn't that needed. But in the what he's done so far has been pretty impressive for rookie. He's been basically startable every week before this week, out the gate. So those guys kind of round out the top four, and one guy I'll slide in there, which I don't know if everyone has him there, but it's Jalen Rager. And Jalen Rager looked hella impressive before he got injured. And I typically don't just throw guys out because of injury, because he was looking good in training camp, he was looking good on the field. He was in, I mean, that offense is basically ripe for his taking. So those are like the top five guys, right? And then beyond that, we got Chase Claypool, who's been balling out, someone who I completely whiffed on. I'm totally willing to take that L right now because he's been more than impressive. Also, he's from the six, he's from Canada, so got to give him the love as a Canadian homie over there. And then who am I missing here? But and then you got like the fringe guys. You got the Gabriel Davises, who kind of impressed as a fringe guy. You got Darnell Mooney, who I'm irrationally in love with. So it's a really, really deep, talented rookie class, and I'm kind of really excited to see how these guys develop over the next 2 to 3 years. I went all in on them this year, so hopefully that's going to pay off. But yeah, I just wanted a really quick shout out to all the rookie wide receivers. If you guys are sitting on some of these guys in Dynasty, I'm just gonna say don't let them go. I said CeeDee Lamb was basically off the trade block for me in all leagues, and that's true. I basically, people have offered me stuff for him, and I've just turned it down. People have offered me better deals. People offered me like DeAndre Hopkins and stuff for him, and I've just turned them down because I truly believe that CeeDee Lamb is the future, and I truly believe now, after seeing some of this stuff like Justin Jefferson deserves to be mentioned right above him. I think in the big dog ranks, we had Justin Jefferson ahead of Jerry Judy. Oh yeah, that's the other one I forgot. Jerry Judy's kind of in that next tier, but we had Justin Jefferson ahead of Jerry Judy. That's proven to be a good decision so far, mainly because Justin Jefferson has proven himself to be an alpha dog. I mean, he is the wide receiver one, outside receiver in that offense. Adam Thielen's still going to ball this year, and Adam Thielen's a monster. I love him in redraft, but let's not make no mistake here. I do think that Justin Jefferson is the alpha to come in that offense, and that's why he kind of has a higher ceiling for me. And a lot of guys who I respect, actually, some guys had Justin Jefferson as their wide receiver one, and if you made the case for him to be wide receiver one ahead of CeeDee Lamb, honestly, there's a good case to be made for that. So huge respect to those guys. They said who the real JJ was, and it's not Jerry Judy, and it's Justin Jefferson. And so far, it's still early. It's still early, but it's proven to be correct, and they've just been balling out of control. And I'm just super excited that we have, a very, very bright future. And we always said the wide receiver class is deep, the wide receiver talent is deep, and it has been. And seeing these rookies perform, also knowing the talent that's coming in next year, it's going to be good hands, man. The zero RB drafters are going to keep going down with that ship because the wide receivers are deep enough with this young rookie talent and young receiving talent that carry us into the future. All right, so move on to the main topic of discussion, the main course, the filet mignon of this episode. What I want to go through is a couple of different things. And the first part is, when do you start a rebuild? And I covered this a little bit in last time's episode, but in case those of you didn't catch it, I just want to cover it briefly again. And it's basically in any league where I don't view myself as a true contender anymore. And my definition of contender is probably a lot different than what most people, the consensus would tell you. I mean, most people view contenders as someone that makes it in the playoffs, right? For me, that's not it. Like, I don't want to skirt into the playoffs and hope for a couple lucky breaks my way to win a championship. Like, I want to be in Dynasty. I want to be a dominant force. I want to be like heads and shoulders above everyone else. And in the leagues where I'm truly trying to go for it, you'll see like my rosters and compare them to the rest of the league, and it's a clear tier break between either me and everyone else or me and like one other guy or two other guys and everyone else. So to be a true contender, you got to like look at your team and compare your team to some of the other guys. And if you're new to Dynasty, this might be tough, right? For me, I just basically pull up the rosters of everyone. I look around, I say like, okay, what's everyone's record? What do the teams in the lead look like? Where am I at, and how do I compare to those guys, right? And usually for me, that's just like a quick glance, because I'm like knee deep in this stuff all the time. So I just look through the rosters and I know like who's going to be competitive. And I look at not only the roster, but I look at their draft picks. And that's the key. I think people don't look at the draft picks much, but you should, because as I've said many times before, draft picks are the ultimate currency in Dynasty, right? They are the creme de la creme because everyone wants draft picks, right? Not everyone wants that player that you have on your roster, right? Let's say you have a good player on your roster, and if it's not like some, first tier like startup like a DK Metcalf right now, for example, who everyone wants, if it's not someone like that, your market for trading is a lot smaller because you have a limited set of buyers that are interested in that asset, right? So that's automatically going to drive the price down. But draft picks, everyone wants them, man. Everyone wants a first round pick. Everyone wants a piece of a draft pick, and they're the most flexible currencies. That's why I look at draft picks, because even if guys don't have the strongest roster, I look at their draft capital and they have a strong draft pool, which I've encouraged you guys to build over time. If you see someone with like 4 or 5 firsts and they're in the middle of the pack or they're near the top, be very scared, because they can take those first and flip it for pretty crucial assets like right away. They can take a first and flip it for Adam Thielen easily. They can take a first and flip it for like a Julio Jones easily, right? Like especially towards the tail end where like rebuilders are kind of on the fringe. They're gonna be able to flip those first for pretty much a lot of assets, and they're gonna go quickly from adding a ton of points to their starting lineups. They can be really strong. So that's one aspect that I really look out for. The other aspect, if you guys aren't as used to it, instead of looking at record, because the record can be really deceiving based on what your matchups and how lucky you got. Some people look at like points for, so how many points did that team score, and that is a good measure as well. But what I like to do is I like to look at potential points for. And if you're in Sleeper app, which I'm sure most of you are, what you can do is you scroll to the league and you go down, and there's a section there that says view details beside the league standings. When you click view details, there'll be a column that's like PFR or like max potential points, something like that. And what that means is like if you played best ball, if all your best players played every week, what would your score be? And I look at that, and I look at the strongest teams that scored the most using that format, because that kind of eliminates a little bit of the mistake of like bad management, and I think it's a more accurate depiction of how strong a team is. So for example, I have a league right now where I'm like 4-1, right? But my potential points is horrible. And what it means is like I got really lucky with my matchups. So, guys started approaching me like, hey, you're 4-1, you're going for the playoffs. Like, I'll give you Julio for a first. I'll give you, this, Melvin Gordon for a first. And I was like, dude, no, because my team is not that good. And if I skirt by in the playoffs by getting lucky, I'm fine with it, but I'm not going to push my chips in to basically go all the way, because I know my team isn't that good. So that's the number one check. Check your potential points for, like basically your maximum points for, and you can find that on a variety of platforms. I just showed you how to do it on Sleeper. On MFL, if you use my fantasy league, you can run a report. I think it's called Power Rankings, and in that Power Rankings, it'll also show you what your maximum potential points for is. So that's a great way to gauge. And so once you've kind of like done all that assessment, and you're like sitting there and you're like 3-2, and you're like bottom 4 of potential points for, that's when I would start pulling the plug and starting to hit that rebuild. And some people aren't like that. They want to like try and roll the dice. And look, for me, like I'll roll the dice and redraft all day, but in Dynasty, I'd rather try and build for a long term. So I'll pull the plug on a 3-2 team easily, even if I'm like on a fringe playoff team, because I don't want to be a fringe playoff team. I don't want to get like a middling draft pick. So that's how you determine what you're going to rebuild. Then the next stage, obviously, is like, what do you do? Like, how do you sell, right? And the way to tank, there's a proper way to tank, and the way I do it, and in my opinion, the legitimate way to do it is to sell off your assets, right? You want to sell off points on your starting lineup because ideally you have your own first round pick. Now, if you don't, what you want to do is before you start tanking, try and get your first round pick back, because once you start tanking and people start seeing you tank, you're going to have a hard time getting that pick back because everyone knows them being early first. So before you engage the tank, always try and get your own future first round picks back. And for whatever reason you traded away your first round pick and you got too overzealous this season, look, it's a mistake. It's fine. But don't be afraid to overpay for it, because once you buy that pick back, you're going to start dumping assets like no tomorrow. And that first round pick is going to go up and up and up. And next thing you know, you're going to have like a 1.01, 1.02, 1.03. So don't be afraid to overpay for that pick a little bit to get it back, because you can artificially increase that price by yourself by tanking following that. So assuming you have your first round pick, what you want to do is sell off picks off your starting roster. And you don't want to be like, don't be the cowardly guy that like benches their studs. I can't stand that. Like it's honestly, it's like one of the weakest forms of playing Dynasty. Like even when I tank, I'm still fielding my best lineup every week, right? Because I don't want to screw with other people's playoff chances, right? If like by giving people free wins because they ran into me at the right time. I think that's messed up for the league, and some people do it, and whatever, man, they're cowards. So don't be a coward. But what you can do legitimately is to sell points off your team. And the reason why you want to do it, like I said, if you take points off of your starting lineup and you store it in draft picks, it does two things. It increases the value of your draft picks, your first round pick, your second round picks. So your team's getting worse, right? But also, it takes those points and that value of that player and stores it in a protected asset. And I've always said this, the safest asset is a future first round pick and a future second round pick, right? So that's why you want to do that. And that is the legitimate way to tank. So first, make the decision to tank. And then once you do, acquire your first round rookie pick back. After that, start selling off assets. And which assets should you sell off? When I engage rebuild, anyone that's above the age of 25 is basically gone for me. So I don't care if they're in their prime, whatever. Those assets are basically gone for me, because if you're doing like a true rebuild, like if your team is really like kind of tanking, like a depth rebuild, it might take you like 2 years to really be a top end contender. So you got to think about it in that terms. Like, hey, like if I'm planning 2 years out, like is that running back that's 25 years old, are they still going to be really producing for me? Am I going to be able to trade them later? And the other way to think about it is like wide receivers, right? Like, obviously there's prime wide receivers now, like Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas. These guys are like 27, 28, and they still have value right now. But in 2 years, when you start competing, like those guys are going to be kind of like at that age apex. And you, if anything, you can sell them now and buy them back later, because 30-year-old guys are easy to buy. Like Julio Jones, if you want to get him right now, easy. You just go and toss out a first. More often than not, you'll get him back, right? But you can sell guys like Devontae Adams and Michael Thomas and DeAndre Hopkins for much more than just a single first right now. So it's kind of like that arbitrage profit where you get those guys off your team, you realize that profit at their peak value right now, and you can buy them back later on in the career for the production when their production exceeds their value. Whereas right now, I think, they're still at their peak value. Even someone like Tyreek Hill, I would definitely, he's my wide receiver one, dynasty wide receiver one, but I would chip him off immediately, because, as much as I love him, if you're rebuilding, you want to get younger and also you get more depth, right? And that's that's the other piece here. Like I love trading down when I'm rebuilding. So I'll take guys that are at the peak value. So like first round, second round startup value. Think about guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Devontae Adams, Tyreek Hill, Chris Godwin. Like these guys are at peak value. And what you can do is you take them and trade them for a lesser asset plus a draft pick plus a first, right? If you can get Godwin for like Justin Jefferson in a first, Godwin for T Higgins and a first and a second, I think these are all realistic deals you can get done. And one, it adds to your depth, your draft pick portfolio, and contenders are going to be willing to pay that because they see those assets as guys that can help them win right now. Which it might be true, but as a rebuilder, you're trying to just accrue value, man. When I'm a rebuilder, I don't even think about my starting lineup. I'm only thinking about value. I'm only making bets and investing in assets that I think will increase in value. So Guys that are 27 right now are not going to increase in value going forward at the wide receiver position. Guys that are 24, 25 right now are not going to be increasing in value over the next 2 years. It just doesn't happen very often. So someone like, on the running back side, someone like an Alvin Kamara, someone like a, Zeke Elliott, like these are the top running backs right now. I would be taking them and shipping them off for trading down for a younger model. And some of the RB1s right now, like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, these guys are depressed right now. J.K. Dobbins, these are depressed values, right? I would take advantage of that and get one of them back plus something, plus a first, plus a younger wide receiver. So those are the guys I'm shipping off, right? And ideally, I'm playing mostly super flex, so most of my strategy is going to go towards that. Ideally, you want to lock down a quarterback, right? You want to lock down a quarterback position and hopefully a young quarterback. Someone like a Tua Tagovailoa right now is a great target for someone who's rebuilding because one, he's not putting up points for you because he's not playing, even though he stepped on the field very briefly. So that's good. So it keeps it keeps your draft capital high and keeps your points low. Two, we know Tua is a good prospect, right? He's done nothing wrong for his value to actually fall below Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. It's just that he hasn't played, and he had that injury and all those concerns. But Tua, as I've always said, and as a lot of us have always said, like he is a great prospect and he is a great quarterback in my opinion. And once he gets a starting job, his value is going to go up automatically because that's how Superflex works. So even if you don't believe in him, acquire him now and trade him later once he becomes a starter, right? So Tua is a great target. Justin Herbert, if you can acquire him, that's great. But he's obviously, you know, he's obviously skyrocketed in value just given how well he's performed recently. Another guy I missed on, obviously. But I've pivoted and I'm trying to acquire some stock in him right now. So you want to build around young quarterbacks, right? If you want to get two, maybe three of them on your roster, right? And then the next gap I like to fill is wide receiver, right? Wide receivers, and I like to get young wide receivers. Like I said, no one above the age of 25, but ideally, I want guys I want rookies, sophomores, or maybe like third year guys right now if I'm rebuilding. So, in a productive struggle league that I'm doing with Nick and them in the What It Do Dynasty, like I basically have a stacked wide receiver roster, right? I have like Justin Jefferson, T. Higgins, DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Marquise Brown, Terry McLaurin. I basically built my entire wide receiver portfolio using the 2019 and 2020 wide receiver class, which I felt were extremely, extremely strong. And then stock draft picks on top of that. And the reason why you want to do that is because, this is the point, like for rebuilding, length and longevity matters. Like I always talk about how we should go running back and chase the apex. That's true for contenders. But if you're rebuilding, you need the margin of error, like the lifespan of a wide receiver, to kind of actually build your team. Because if you miss on a couple of draft picks, you're not screwed over because those wide receivers will still last longer, and many of them won't even enter their primes until they're like fourth, fifth years in the league, right? So you want to target young, productive wide receivers, right? So when you're trading out of those assets like Kamara's, the elite wide receivers, you want to try and get a piece of those wide receivers back plus a draft pick. And that's the other thing. Like you don't want to just take Kamara and just dump him for a bunch of draft picks. I very, very rarely do that because you can miss on draft picks. But also, like I just like getting a proven piece back so that like even if I miss, I'm still left with something, right? I'm left with like a Justin Jefferson. I'm left with a like a CD Lamb. I'm left with a, LaVisca Chanel, T. Higgins, something like that, right? So you want to stock up on young elite wide receivers. So if you have your QBs, young QBs, you have your young wide receivers, that gives you an incredible runway to actually engage your rebuild and gives you a lot of flexibility to do whatever it is you want, right? And the last piece, I think this is where I kind of differ from a lot of dynasty players, I think. And it's the tight end position. I like to have a tight end secured in my rebuild, a young stud tight end on my roster as a part of my rebuild. So, when I did my 1 year productive struggles, like a couple years ago, I would like go after like an Evan Ingram, who at the time was pretty good. He's obviously flopped now, or like a George Kittle. So I have a lot of George Kittle across my teams where I started a productive struggle in the year in 2018 or 2019, right? And then also Mark Andrews. Like those are probably some of my most roster tight ends. And then beyond that, I love to take like darts on guys before they break out. The Noah Fants, the TJ Hawkinsons, these types of good profiles and have shown some promise in their rookie seasons, but have yet to fully break out. So you can kind of acquire them at a great value. And that's regardless of if it's a tight end premium or a non-tight end premium league. I think, if anything, I think people probably overvalue tight ends and tight end premium because the only tight ends that really get boosted in tight end premiums are the truly elite target hogs. The Travis Kelce's, the George Kittles, and obviously the Darren Wallers, as much as people hate to admit it, like those are the guys that get the most value. The middling tier probably gets overvalued a little bit, right? And But in non-tight end premium, I think people just like completely disregard the tight end. And I don't get it because it's not like redraft where you can like pick tight ends off the waiver and stream. Like when you're in Dynasty and you don't have a tight end like that, and you have like you're like picking between like freaking, Logan Thomas and like like Mike Gesicki and then like these types of guys that are like either giving you like 10 points or like giving you like a dud or like 2 points every other week. It's a painful process, right? Like as part of because a dynasty roster, like having that entire slot, like that position addressed using one player is a pretty big luxury. It frees you up from a roster perspective, but also it's just something you don't have to worry about. And tight ends, like wide receiver, like quarterbacks, have a very long shelf life. If anything, tight ends actually have a longer shelf life than wide receivers do. So guys like Kelsey will be playing well into their mid 30s. Guys like Kittle, guys like Mark Andrews, guys like Darren Waller. So I'm not worried about his age because he's 27. He's got another 5, 7, 8 years of his prime left, right? So that's why I like to build around tight ends. And the other part of it is if you guys know me, like I'm always about driving scarcity of value because the more scarce assets you have, the more trade partners you have, and the more artificially that drives up the value of the player, drives up the demand, and makes them easier to trade. So in Dynasty, I am a hog. I'm a hogger of tight ends. Like I'll have in most leagues, like I'll have like Kittle, like, and then I'll have like, Noah Fant plus TJ Hawkinson. I'll have like Mark Andrews plus like Noah Fant plus Dallas Goedert plus Jonnu Smith, right? And I also have like 4 or 5 of them. I don't care, especially those young ones that have yet to break out that I think are true breakout candidates. I will stash all of them because they're incredibly cheap, first of all, to acquire and to draft. But second of all, like once people need them, you're the only one that they can come to. And this has played out across the board in a lot of my leagues where I hog tight ends. And when people need to trade, other rebuilders or even rebuilders who are kind of like realizing that that position needs to be addressed before they can completely fulfill the rebuild, or like even contenders that are like, damn, like I'm tired of getting like 3 points for my tight end position, they'll come to you and you will be able to charge more than someone else that only has one. Because the other guys that have like every year, there's only like 5, 6, like maybe 7 tight ends that are even usable, right? I always said, like, if you're not a top 5 tight end, you don't even matter. Like that's very, very true. So like if you have 2 of them or 3 of them, sometimes if you have 3 of the top 8, you have if you have 3 or 4 of the top 8, you have a 50% market share in a 12-man league, and you're the only person they come to. So I find that to be extremely valuable, right? So I tie down the quarterback, I tie down the wide receiver, and I tie down the tight end. And those are the guys that I build around. So I'll like give you an example. Right now I'm in a super productive struggle that I engaged from the jump, and I have like I think like 5 or 6 2022 first, 4 or 5 2021 first, and I have like probably like 12 seconds between the 2 years, right? So I've basically cornered the draft pick market, and I'm building around what I have on my roster right now. Is I have CeeDee Lamb, I have Tyler Boyd, I have Tyreek Hill, who I'm probably going to be looking to move soon, and then I have Tua Tagovailoa and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And those are basically my only main pieces. So my points are going to be incredibly low, and I'm going to have really early draft picks, right? And that's kind of like a sample of a core that I have. The last piece I address is running back. And the only reason why I have running back there is because I really believe in Clyde Edwards-Helaire as a riser, despite the Le'Veon Bell signing. I think he's actually a pretty talented running back. He's showing up pretty well. And the Le'Veon Bell signing, we can cover it at some other video, but I think it's more of like they couldn't have like Darrell Williams and, Darwin Thompson as the backup. So it's not really a knock on Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's more so just a great opportunity came up for a good running back. So anyways, that's not the point of this episode. But those are like the kind of pieces I build around, right? So I address quarterback, I address wide receiver, I address tight end. And the reason why I don't address running back until the very end is because I don't want them scoring a lot of points for me. But 2, because you're tanking, your picks are going to be typically earlier. So you're going to be able to address the running back position by taking the top running backs. You're going to be able to land guys like Jonathan Taylor. You're going to be able to land guys like Clyde Edwards-Helaire. You're going to be able to land guys like Saquon Barkley when they came out, right? These are the top, like the first round pick running backs, which is like the creme de la creme of Dynasty. You're going to be able to land those guys with your draft picks if you've built it the right way. And that's why I kind of address and tackle those positions first before getting to the final position of running back. All right. So just to recap, first, determine if you are going to be a contender, or if you're a pretender, quickly pivot into a rebuild. And once you kick off the rebuild, make sure you have your own first round pick. So that's like step 1 before you really start tanking. And then the last part is obviously don't be the coward, but tank the right way. Sell off those aging assets, sell off those productive guys so you can reduce the scoring on your own team, boost the value of your own draft picks going forward. And then lastly, first secure your quarterback and your wide receiver and your tight ends in that order. In superflex leagues, obviously, in one QB, the quarterback doesn't nearly matter as much. But in superflex leagues, address your quarterback, address your wide receiver, and address your tight ends, and then address running backs last. So don't go chasing running backs, okay? Don't go overpaying for guys like Jonathan Taylor, as much as you love him. Don't go overpaying for guys like Clyde Delaire right out the gate. Try and secure those wide receivers and those quarterbacks and those tight ends, unless you get a good deal on Clyde Delaire or Jonathan Taylor. Obviously, you can make a pick, but stock up on those draft capital, and that's going to be your pool or basically your freaking pot of gold as it just like skyrockets to the moon from now until the draft. And once you've like kind of set that up, trust me when I say this, like the rebuild turnaround is going to be quick, right? You see a lot of guys in your leagues that are basically stuck in fucking fantasy purgatory. I call it dynasty purgatory, that middle of the pack that every year gets like middling picks, and they try and trade they trade draft capital for band-aid solutions to try and just squeak into the playoffs, and they get bounced like in the first, second round. Like you don't want to be that guy. But if you approach a rebuild this way where you fully commit to the tank, you're going to have the resources to turn things around really quick because you're going to have that pool of draft capital. And when the draft comes, like, people are worried about these draft picks. I'm telling you, don't, because I can list you off right now like 15 players right off the jump that are incredibly talented that potentially be studs. Right, you got Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields, Trey Lance, three pretty talented quarterbacks that I think will all be drafted in the first round rookie picks. So that's three already, right? And that before you even get the skill position, you got Najee Harris and Travis Etienne, who are the top stud running backs available. So they're going to go basically either right after Trevor Lawrence or right after Justin Fields, right? And then you got the wide receivers coming in. You got Jamar Chase, Rashad Bateman. You got Jalen Waddle. You got one of my personal favorites, Seth Williams. You got Terrace Marshall, who's actually letting it up as well. And then you got Truba Hubbard. You got who I really like, Journey Brown, one of my favorite running back prospects that are coming in the next class. And then you got De'Ami Brown, who's one of my favorite wide receiver prospects. Like, look, this class is gonna be stacked. And that doesn't even talk about Kyle Pitts, who's been an absolute monster on the tight end side. So, look, don't be worried about the talent. COVID or not, this is gonna be an incredibly talented class. Keep stocking up those rookie picks and don't trade them early. Just wait. And if you don't believe in these rookies, I promise you someone else in your league will, and they will pay out the ass to acquire those picks next year. And you're going to realize that value gain between now and April, and it's just going to be free money. And just like this pod, I'm hopefully showing you guys how to make that bread in your leagues, because if there's one thing I know about Dynasty, rebuilds are fun, but if you don't go about it the right way, you're going to be fucked for years to come. So make sure you follow the right process. Hopefully you found this video helpful. I know it was a little bit of a longer one, but there was a lot of content to cover because I wanted to give you the intricate details into my process of how I go about rebuilds. It's not the only way that works. There's a lot of other smart analysts out there that do their thing, and I'm sure it works for them. This is just what works for me. And probably on the next episode, I know I've been saying this for a while now, I will probably be doing a full breakdown and take you from the beginning to end of one of the rebuilds or productive struggles that I've done either this year or last year or my first year of Dynasty or something like that. Drop in the comments below if that's something you want to see, or if there's something else you want to see, let me know that as well. And I actually just got these bad boys, so there, your boy's into the football card game now, because I figured, look, I mean, I'm good at Dynasty, so not much other research needed, but I just picked up these boxes. Probably not going to be buying many more boxes going forward because I think it's a waste of money. It's more gambling, and I'm a degenerate gambler. So, to kind of get into this, it kind of makes sense that I went this way to just kick it off and have some fun. But going forward, I'll probably be investing in like player cards, similar to like how I do in Dynasty, of investing in players and making my big bets, and hopefully they pay off. And I'll kind of, if you want to see some of that weave into future videos, again, just drop that in the comments below. I'll be doing that box break or unveiling or whatever you want to call it. I'm gonna open up those boxes and showing you guys the cards, and I'll probably weave in a little bit of player analysis in there because that's what I do. I don't want to make it just a boring box break where I show you pieces of cardboard, overpriced pieces of cardboard. I don't think that's too fun. But yeah, if there's anything else you want me to cover in those types of videos, you got any tips, make sure you drop that in the comments. I'm always open to feedback. Looking forward to engaging with you guys. If you like this video, subscribe, hit that thumbs up. You have no idea how much it helps us. If you didn't like the video, I mean, tell me why. Tell me why. If you didn't like my hair, you didn't like my face, you didn't like my cards, whatever it is, drop in the comments. We're always open for that. As long as you're engaging with us, we appreciate it. But that's all for this week. Hope you guys enjoyed. Wolfpack out. We'll be back to you again next week.